Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone this week to this week's edition of Imperial One's Belonging series, where we explore the experiences of BAME individuals. And this week, I am really pleased to say that we've got Mr. Leon McFarlane. And Leon is a senior research technician at Imperial College. I'm going to let him explain a little bit more about what that role entails. And then we can take it from there. So, Leon, it's really good to have you on with us this afternoon. Um, if you'd like to just give us a little bit of an update or tell us a little bit about yourself, about let's start with your childhood, your parents, where they're from, etc., and just get a sense of who you are and your sense of belonging.
Yes. So let's start with the childhood then. So in terms of background, my heritage is Caribbean. Both parents are Jamaican,
Yep.
which, I'm definitely proud to wave that flag. And it's a case where, in terms of my childhood, in terms of my liking and love for immunology and science, essentially started off with a book series called How My Body Works, which my mum and dad subscribed to at the nice tender age of 8.
Right.
Essentially, with that series, it's a cartoon avatar based version of the immune system, of how the cardiovascular system works as well. And it's a case where from there, that's why I knew my heart was truly in immunology.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of my family as such, there's not that many people within the science and healthcare side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But with the impetus of my parents' guidance, as well as these external factors such as subscriptions to these sort of things, I went on to then go and embark onto an undergraduate at St. George's Medical School, and that was in biomedical science.
So let's go back a little bit
Mm-hmm.
before we get to your undergrad at St. George's, which is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
What about when you were at school? Because you mentioned there that your passion for science or for immunology came from the fact that your parents bought you that book series, How the Body Works. And
Mm-hmm.
what influenced you? What other influences from school, or were there any influences from school which gave you that desire to look into science more?
Well, with school, it's more the case where, in terms of, well, at Ernest Bevin, which is where my secondary school was,
Right.
it's the case where, yeah, I'm just always was very fond of just a constellation of networks. How do things work in a biological process? Now, obviously, back then, I wouldn't have explained it in that sort of way,
Mm-hmm.
but just understanding how things work. And I felt that science in general had like a nice hook in terms of that. Plenty of support by teachers in Ernest Bevin as well. So I find that, yeah, it's just trying to understand the unknown
Mm-hmm.
essentially is what kind of pushed me towards that.
You know what? It's very interesting that you should mention Ernest Bevin as the school that you went to, because we
Hmm.
had someone on here a few months back, Donald Palmer, who
Hmm.
also went to Ernest Bevin.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to have to check out Ernest Bevin a little bit more, because it seems that they seem to produce lots of young black scientists. So I'm going to have a look at that place a little bit more and find out
Hmm.
exactly what they're doing. So they gave you the encouragement to pursue the science which you were interested in, as well as the encouragement from your parents. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. That is correct.
Yeah. So did you always want to do, in terms of in science? Because I know growing up from a Caribbean background, the idea for going into, if you're clever and you're in the sciences, it's kind of like medicine is the thing that they wanted you to do.
Hmm.
Did you have that kind of pressure on you, or what kind of things were they pushing you towards, would you say?
So, funnily enough, well, Caribbean household, well, Jamaican households generally have this idea of being really, really laid back. Now, with me personally, I really wanted to do medicine.
Hmm.
But when I got to, let's say, AS level, so around the age of 16, 17,
Yeah.
I then decided, now with medicine, it's late hours. Okay, for instance, there's a large amount of prestige with it, but is it truly for me? That was the real question.
Hmm.
And not to belittle medicine, because medicine is a great career, as we already know, and there's a lot of work in terms of looking after our COVID patients at this current moment, where it is our doctors and other people within healthcare that are helping us get through this time in life. But for me, it was more the case of, okay, with science, is it the case where yes, I'm a small cog in a big machine, but will that small cog allow bigger effects on the grand scheme of things?
Yeah.
So that's where I then turned more my mentality towards the sciences and towards research. I didn't know if it was going to be immunology or what pocket of research, but it was more the case of, okay, research is definitely the thing for me. So that's where applications, when it did come to A2, were more research-based and more in the biomedical science field.
Right. Okay. So you went to St. George's in South London. What did you study at St. George's? Was it biomedical?
Yeah, biomedical science, that's correct.
Right, biomedical sciences. So that's kind of like a mixture of all the medical sciences, but from a scientific more so than a patient perspective.
Yes, that's correct.
So immunology has always been your passion, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Why immunology?
So yeah, again, knowing that, so let's say, so immunology, in a second, I'll go into vaccinology and why I like the vaccinology side of things now. But immunology, knowing that certain changes and certain effects within the immune system can cause big effects in the grand scheme of things in terms of your body. Because at the end of the day, the body is trying to keep a balance. So when you have external factors such as bacteria, viruses, fungi, it's the case where the body has its immune defenses against these things to maintain a homeostasis, maintain peace and control within the actual body itself. And understanding what chemicals involved, what different parts in terms of the biological processes, what in terms of that allow you to be, let's say, a certain way. So how come some people, when they get a cold or flu, they have really, really intense symptoms, and why some people do not have symptoms whatsoever? All this is based down and comes down to how your immune system works, or how my body works, going back to what the subscription book series was back when I was 8, 10.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. So are there any other kind of like scientists in your family, or are you the first? Are you the pioneer?
So you could call me the pioneer, I guess. Yeah, you could. In terms of research science, we do have quite a few nurses and people who are within healthcare. But in terms of the actual research science, yes, that's me. I'm more the pioneer in that sense. And I do have siblings who are going along the science stream as well.
Okay, fantastic. So have you ever felt, because we're looking at belonging now at St. George's, in terms of like demographics, were there many other young Black students on the course which you were doing, the biomedical science course, or was it a case of it was you and no one else?
So St. George is definitely quite multicultural. I wouldn't say I was the only. There were many others with more an African background, sub-Saharan African background, rather than a Caribbean. But yes, there were others that were there. So I didn't feel alone, or, in terms of people trying to understand my background and my life, essentially.
Okay, so that gave you that sense of belonging. I should be here. What about, what did you do after you've done your undergraduate? After you've done your undergrad.
Yeah, so after my undergraduate, I then moved on to an internship with the Sanjeev Krishna Group and Dr. Henry Staines, and that was mainly looking at medical parasitology. So that was looking at drug transporter inhibitors, looking at novel ways of preventing infection with malaria. So done that for 2 years, and then I moved on to London School of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene to do infection. Hold on, what was the name of the course? It was an immunology course. Right. So yeah, immunology of infectious diseases. There we go. So it's a mouthful. It's been a while. So I went on to do that for a year, and now I am currently with the Robin Shattock group doing vaccine immunology.
So you've kind of like gone from basic immunology to a more of an applied immunology within a kind of infectious diseases perspective. Is that would that be the right definition of it?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So it's more focused. So how has that prepared you for the role which you're undertaking now? Can you just define your role a little bit for our listeners?
Okay, so in terms of my role within the Shattock Group,
Mm-hmm.
it's the case where we run vaccine clinical trials here. Well, I say here, we're in collaboration with many other clinical sites. It's the case where here we gain all the biological samples and we then run immunogenicity assays on them. So it's the case where, let's say, for example,
just slow down.
yeah,
When
no problem.
I'm an immunologist, well, kind of pseudo immunologist, so I know what you mean by immunologist. I can't even say it now, right? But for our audience, what do you mean when you say immunogenicity?
So what I mean by immunogenicity is what immune responses do we mount against a specific vaccine? That is technically what we're looking at. And there are many different ways of quantifying or looking at immunogenicity. So do we mount an immune response? So let's say, for example, COVID, for example. So at Imperial, we do have a COVID vaccine, which is currently in its trial state. So if we give you this vaccine, how long does it take for you to mount an antibody response to this vaccine? Or is it a case where you have more of a cellular response? And then on top of that, okay, yes, you generate an antibody response, which we mainly look at using technology called ELISA, where essentially where we quantify the amount of antibody. But is it a case where how good are these antibodies? Do they neutralize live infectious virus? So it's the case where we look at those modalities, and from that we can generally say what would the success be with our vaccine or with a modality that we're testing.
And tell me what's your role within it, because I often look on and I see when I'm looking and I see Robert Shattock's group, I always see you standing up beside him, and I think, boy, proud. So tell me a little bit about your role in the whole thing. And you're a senior research technician, so explain your role for us, please.
Yes, so in terms of my role, it's the case where the daily running of the actual lab itself. So we are in contact with these other sites regarding what samples come in. Also in charge and collaborating, get things done in terms of running these assays for immunogenicity. So there was a post on LinkedIn, I think back in November, where it very boldly said, this man, Leon McFarlane, will tell you if our vaccine works. Which, yes and no, that is correct. But it's more the case where it's like, yes, we can generally see the parameters which would lead to a successful vaccine. So we run the experiments, so we run ELISAs, we run neutralization assays to see how good these antibody responses are. And then it's also the case of things like public engagement, so things like this as well.
Okay. There's something I want to lead us into, but before I go there, I want us to just what challenges have you faced in getting to where you are now, would you say?
Okay, so the group, lovely, but in terms of coming into a group where it is, well, in terms of being an ethnic minority, you generally are a minority. You are literally one of the only people who represent the Black community. You do kind of get a sense sometimes, well, I know initially, no problem now because I've been integrated into the group for a good 5 years, imposter syndrome. So you come into, again, this can be used as an analogy for more or less any sort of workplace anyway, whereas the case where if you are the only person who represents a Caribbean background, being the only one coming in there, you start to question yourself. Are you here to fill in a quota? Do I belong here? Am I smart enough to be here? It's these questions that you do ask yourself, and you ask yourself on a daily basis. You do have this inherent sense of doubt. But I do find that things like public engagement such as this and talking to your colleagues are definitely very important. While growing up, it was the case where my dad would drill into me that in comparison, when it comes to a job, when it comes to most things, you generally have to work twice as hard as your Caucasian counterpart, which with that mindset, you do start to doubt yourself in certain ways. Or when it does come to, let's say, for example, a lab meeting or a journal club, you're like, okay, let me make sure that I know everything. So I'm not letting down the one-man team or the two-man team in that sense.
No, I understand. I totally understand that you're constant. That pressure, was it a pressure for you of having to always represent? You always had, you couldn't have an off day. It's like the immune system. Our immune system can't have an off day, because if we have an off day, the virus or the pathogen comes in and we become sick and unwell. So how's that pressure? Was there pressure for you? Would you say?
So initially, yes, I felt the pressure in terms of making sure that I don't make mistakes or making sure that, yet again, not to let the team down. But when you realize that majority of it is the mental mindset, and once you do start to converse with your team, whether they are Caucasian, whether they are Black, whether they're Asian, doesn't matter. I think once you start to converse and engage, that's where you do start to feel the sense of belonging, going back to the term of this talk. So yeah, that's generally how I pushed forward with that. And now it's the case where now I can do public engagement such as this and happily talk to colleagues in terms of this is how it feels to be an ethnic minority in this position. And yet again, it is mainly based off representation. If you don't see someone who does look, or if you don't see someone who looks like you around, then it's a case of, oh, well, you know, where should I lead to, or how should I be?
Yeah,
I mean?
Totally understand that. Totally understand that. I'm gonna kind of like not switch up, but because we've spoken a lot about kind of like public engagement activities and the need for public engagement activities, especially at this moment in time. And I suppose also because of the fact that you're, as you said earlier on, there was a post which said, this man will tell you whether the vaccine works, right? So I'm going to use that one, right? So tell us a little bit, when we think about vaccine hesitancy within the Black community. Now, your face has been put on, this man will tell me how that's kind of like manifested itself for you as a Black man working in the field. What's happened for you?
Oh, so in terms of, let's think of this one. Repeat that question one more time, just so I can.
I'm just trying to find out what's the impact. What's the impact been on yourself, kind of like being put forward as this person who's going to who's the face of the vaccine, or understanding the vaccine. Remember I talked about pressure earlier on. How has that impacted on you? And what advice would you give to somebody who comes up to you and says about a family member, should I take the vaccine? Should I not take the vaccine? Kind of where does that, what position does that place you? I'm not sure if I clarified the question.
No, you definitely did. You definitely clarified. So initially, it was intense pressure, but then after a while, I felt that it is definitely my duty to, especially being one who is within the science community and does work in terms of vaccine research, to spread my information and spread my knowledge regarding whether vaccines are safe, whether and like little bits and pieces. So in terms of my family, in terms of like my extended family, especially on my mum's side, which is quite a big family, I do have the title MD. Now, I'm not a medicine doctor, obviously, as we've explained here, but when it does come to scientific information, they do come to me for it. Now, again, working primarily in that field, I do find that everything is more diverted to me. So it's quite analogous to what we do see on the LinkedIn platform. And my advice would be, in terms of vaccine hesitancy, we know why it is a thing, because obviously there's this inherent distrust within the Black community. Again, going back to representation, but vaccines are safe. I have taken a vaccine myself, so it's more the case where I think you have to lead by example. And I do feel that it is very important to have representation when it does come to these things. It's very, very, very important to dispel, I won't say fake news, but misinformation in that sense. But yes, I do feel it's more a duty rather than, I don't feel, oh, pressure, pressure, pressure. No, I feel it's more.
Okay. So I like the fact that you say you feel it is a duty as opposed to being pressurized into trying to explain this. And because it's about, if we're honest, it's about protection, and it's about preservation. Because at the end of the day, if we don't promote a balanced argument so that people can make an informed choice, we're not pushing this onto anybody, but that they can make an informed choice with the level of information which is available to them, and making sure that they've got as much information as possible. And I think you're perfectly placed, not just because of the fact that you're in the lab, but your research and your educational experiences, everything that you've studied to this point points you in that direction. The fact it's something to do with the immune system, the fact that you studied about infectious diseases, the fact that you have engaged in the whole vaccinology process, because I know for this is a bit of a long-winded question, but in terms of some of the things, so I'm going to fire a question at you, right?
You got fire away.
I'm going to fire a question at you, right? Because this is one which I've heard on a number of occasions. Well, I was going to do an accent, but I'll behave myself, right? Right. I was going to say, I've heard where they've said, well, how come it's been so quick, right? Because we've heard that it takes 10, 12 years to get a vaccine license, and this is less than 8 to 10 months. What kind of response would you give surrounding that?
See, now this is the thing. The key word the key phrase that you said is "we heard."
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So with that being the key phrase, when it comes to other vaccines in the past, has there been a dire need to get a vaccine out to restore a way of life? Not that I know of, well, not in my lifetime anyway. So with that being the case, and with the unprecedented circumstances that we have seen with this pandemic, it's the case where as long as there's a massive need, and as long as you have people who can divert that money towards that need, which in this case it is vaccines to restore a way of life, it is a possibility. Obviously following the normal following safety measures and normal regulations, which obviously profoundly important. We need to make sure that a vaccine is safe before we start to distribute it. So 8 to 9 months, I wouldn't say is too fast, especially as we have all the safety data from various vaccine studies.
So it's building on the knowledge and building on the fact that actually the SARS COVID 2 variant, which we're actually looking at, it is a variant, but it's not a new infection, as it were.
Yeah? Exactly. Coronaviruses have always been around. It's just that this specific version, which is quite virulent and at this particular case is quite deadly, has come up into the news.
That's that. Yeah. So I'm just thinking of some other questions related to that. So the speed at which it's the safety, you've spoken about the safety. What? Because I've heard about, and I'm playing devil's advocate with you today, Leon. I don't normally do that, play devil's advocate with you, right?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to throw out some questions which I've heard. There's things like, well, we've heard. You're going to say, I can already hear what you're going to say, but it says that we've seen videos where they've said that there's this which is in the vaccine. There's all kinds of different things which are likely to be harmful to us. How would you respond to somebody giving that kind of question or asking you that kind of question?
So my answer to that would be, see, this is the thing with the abundance of information on the internet, we have a lot of accessibility to different streams of information. Now, it's very easy for someone to find a bit of information and then correlate it to something that is negative. Yeah, again, negativity is quite rife within the community. And when I say community, that is literally just in terms of just people in general, not just the Black community. So my answer to that generally would be, it's one of those things where seek truthful information, find someone or find a stream of information where it is trusted rather than relying on this distant auntie in a different country who has forwarded a specific WhatsApp message. It is more the thing of, seek truthful information, seek people who are actually within the field. I'm not just saying that because I am in the field, but it's all about being transparent with specific sorts of information, but from the right sources.
Okay, I like that. So as I'm going to call you a Black scientist because that's what you are.
Yeah.
What would you say that Black scientific community needs to do in order to help to disseminate or to counteract some of these some of this misinformation which is currently going around in relation to the COVID-19 vaccine?
So again, just the main thing that I've been preaching throughout this talk is engagement as well as representation. It is a must to make sure that the knowledge that we know as Black scientists is put out there and making sure that it is transparent and not allowing people within the Black community to see this negative. And it's all about asking questions as well. When it comes to those who are not in the know regarding vaccines or regarding immunology, always prompt them to ask questions and ask questions of those who are in the know, because that is important. Without questions, you do not get the right answers, and without questions, you're not able to make informed decisions on certain things.
So, as you said, people need to ensure that they don't just take the information on face value, that they research it for themselves and they ask the relevant questions of the information. Okay, I like that approach. I do like that approach in terms of that science. I know that you're a scientist because that's a scientific kind of approach. You ask those questions, to interrogate, to look through. And I do like the approach of having the representation and the information. So setting up forums whereby people can hear an alternative viewpoint to one which they may have been posted to them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw recently the MPs, the Black MPs from all parties who did a video which was basically saying about the COVID-19, why within the Black community and Black and Asian and ethnic minority communities, we should be taking the vaccine, or that they are encouraging to take the vaccine. I'm just wondering, based on what we've said, do you think it would be good for a group of Black scientists to do that as well?
Yes, I think there definitely would be a benefit within the community, so within the Black community, as well as an overarching effect in terms of British community as well, or worldwide community in that sense. Because there's just not enough of us out there promoting the message of vaccines need to be taken, in terms of us getting over this hurdle. We definitely need that sort of engagement, definitely. And show that we are there, we do have voices.
Yeah, and that we're making that contribution. That's what I love about the fact that you are there, you see what's happening, and you can be a voice on the front line, actually promoting the cause of Black and Asians and ethnic minorities, and saying, well, how is this going to impact them? But then disseminating the information back into the community so that the community can understand, you know what, this is something which we should be doing. You know what, I could ask loads and loads of questions. I'm going to just see if there's anybody in the audience who would like to ask a question at this point, so that I'm not just whoa, that was quick, man.
Yeah, because even I'm quite
I
surprised. Half an hour's over.
hadn't
I
even
don't
finished
have a
the
timer, but
question, William. William, do you want to ask your question, please?
Yeah, so yeah. Thank you. Yeah, fascinating talk. Mine is sort of slightly different subject. I'm interested, I suppose, in your role. So you're a senior research technician. So I'm wondering what's the career pathway, and is there a difference between your sort of role as technical scientist and maybe like a academic, so traditional professor route, and how does that then operate within the space that you work? Is it seen as a division? Are you all seen as the same? Do you all have the same career opportunities? For people that are listening or people that will watch later in the broader community, how would they sort of see your role and how it would develop compared to maybe being a traditional academic scientist, etc.?
See, now the great thing about my role this current moment, well, being within this group anyway, is the case where it is an academic group as well. So we are the clinical trials team within an academic group. And because of that, it kind of gives us more pathways to decide what we want to do. So if let's say, for example, I did want to go the academic route and pursue a PhD, that is a possibility, as we do have quite a few streams that we can go into within Imperial, which is great. And then obviously later on with the PhD, me personally, I would love to go into project management later on. I'm not tired of the lab yet. I do enjoy the freedom and the questions that are there, but later on I would love to help with the organization and the actual management of a clinical trial. So that is an option too. There's definitely many different streams you can go through. It's not limited, let's put it that way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and so it sounds like you've got flexibility, but I suppose so. But are some routes considered more prestigious than others? I suppose that's what I'm driving at.
See, now the way how I guess it depends on what you want. You could go down the prestigious route of doing a PhD, then becoming a postdoc, and then essentially becoming an assistant professor or a reader. So I would say in terms of the pure research route, that would be the more prestigious way of doing it.
So when you're muted yourself.
Oh, I should be okay.
I had put a mute on mine. I think what William may be trying to look at is whether or not you have considered doing a PhD as an alternative for career progression. And you've already mentioned the fact that you would like to go down the project management route, but whether or not a PhD would also add that level of kudos to your CV, as it were, and whether or not that's something that you'd consider.
And also, I suppose it's the wider thing that if you didn't do that, because in other fields, we've got many Black professionals that work in universities in support roles, professional development, those kinds of things, but they don't have the same prestige, if you like. They're seen as support roles. So even though they're critical to the working of these systems, it doesn't have the same status.
Yeah, it doesn't have. Yes, I agree. Yes, a PhD. Me personally, I have considered it. At this current moment, I'm still on the iffy side of it because I like the freedom at this current moment and the route I would like to. Yes, it would add extra kudos. I definitely would agree with that. But with the route that I would like to take, it's not 100% necessary.
I'm going. From someone who has got a PhD, I'm gonna kind of like this is online careers advice, as it were, guys.
Yeah.
I would say that you can never be overqualified, right? And in terms of being able to move on to the next level, it's almost like a stepping stone. It's a platform where you can move from one place to another, because the paperwork tells them that they've already achieved this level of academic prowess, academic success. Okay, so I think from that point of view, if you were coming to me, I'm doing a live, I don't know, this is normally a private conversation, but if you
Right, open up the conversation.
right.
Open up the discussion, that's what I like.
If you were coming to me, I would say seriously take a consideration of whether or not the next career, a part of your next career point would be to consider doing a PhD. You're in a brilliant position where you are now, but if you want that academic rigor as well, and then also being, excuse me, being able to, because you have so much already, this will be something else which would add to the portfolio of things which you already have. It won't be a disadvantage in any way. That's how I would look at it. All right. Sorry, I'm taking over. Does anyone else have any questions? I saw one in the chat. I'm not sure if this is your sister or a close relative. Chloe?
Yeah, that's my sister.
Yes.
Hey, sis.
I've got two on, right. So I've got Omar's hand up. So Omar, and if your sister doesn't mind asking the question, then we'll have her as well. Omar.
Oh, thanks, Omar.
Got Chloe, then Omar, right?
Oh, dear brother, dear brother, dear brother. Thank you for making your points. I'm enjoying this talk. You know, like, well, I actually work in architecture, urban regeneration industry, but this is still something applicable to like the field of medicine. And, you know, I was wondering if there's a fine line definitely between genuinely ensuring diversity and like tokenism, and like how do you go about assessing like company policies and the way that they go about this, like ensure that they are generally advocating diversity within the industry. So that's my question to you, dear brother.
Well, that's a very intricate question as well. See now, that hasn't been something that I've delved into that much. I'll be honest with you. So yeah, that's a question I could probably answer later on once I do a bit of research.
Thank you.
I like the brother sister dynamic going on here.
Literally, when like myself and my younger brother were just here just enjoying this talk. I know Leon was referring to like his siblings and like background, but as I said, myself, mid sister, I'm in architecture, urban regeneration,
and myself, younger brother, decade younger. I'm in third year studying physics right now.
So yeah, younger brother's at King's College London doing physics, and myself, I'm doing a master's of research at UCL. So yeah, putting the credentials out there. But yes, good thing for you. I'll leave it over to Omar.
just before I move over to Omar, because it's the first time we've had a family on maybe I'll interview the family. But it's brilliant. And
I mean, that's our purpose here. We're here just to literally hijack this interview. So, yeah.
I love it. What I also love is the fact that your parents must be incredibly proud of the achievements of the entire family, right? And the fact that despite all of the negativity in the press, that you've got someone who's at the forefront working within the field of the vaccinology, etc., at a time like this. And then we've got yourself, Chloe, who is doing the work in architecture, urban regeneration, etc. And we've got, I believe, sorry, I didn't get your little brother's name.
Miles.
Miles.
Yeah,
Miles.
like distance Miles.
Miles, right. I believe you do physics?
Yeah, I'm studying physics right now in third year.
Third year, brilliant. So we've got three scientists, because architecture is is an artistic version of science, right? Oh, that's brilliant. Your parents, and I would like to just commend them for having three wonderful children, right? So big up to you. Omar, sorry. I'll hand the question back to you.
I just wanted to say, literally amazing to see so many young Black individuals doing so well. Like, kudos to the three of you. That's amazing, man. Really, really good to hear. It's all good. I just wanted to ask, literally, as a young Black male of British Caribbean heritage, what kind of inspired you to want to go on to higher education, knowing the kind of obstacles and everything that we currently face?
I think it literally is just the case of just wanting to know more, really. It's having, my mum used to always say when I was younger, I would never stop asking questions. It's always, oh, why is that car that color? Or, you know, why is it the case where, why does the sun go up and down, etc.? So it's things like this where it's the intrigue to know more. So from that, once I did get my hooks into immunology and I was inspired by the whole book series, it was a case of, okay, you know what, let's do the undergraduate. And then after the undergraduate, I still had the thirst for more information. So hence we went on to the masters, and now I'm with an amazing group which gives me unlimited questions to ask. And obviously with the pandemic, yes, it's in terms of the times is unprecedented, but there's still more information to know. And I'm happy to relay that information onto the immediate community as well as the further community. So yeah, first for knowledge.
Brilliant, thank you, man. And yeah, as I said, congratulations to all of you, and
Thank
keep
you.
on keeping on, man. Literally, just keep on going.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Brilliant. I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions, but I think everyone's just enthralled by the McFarlane family right now. Right? It's just kudos to the McFarlane. What's your mum and dad's name?
So Gwinnetta and Wesley.
Gwinnetta and Wesley, right? If we could send out a message to them, you know, coming over from the Caribbean, working hard, and supporting their children, it's an amazing achievement, you know. And I just want, I can't words. I'm emotional right now because I'm just so proud of the family's achievements. I'm proud of you that you can be there representing, right, and doing it in such a beautiful and articulate way, right? It's a proud moment for us, right?
Thank you very much.
Right. Chloe, I see your hands back up. Just listen, Chloe, whenever you want to come on, just come on, right? That's all I'm saying.
Thanks, Wayne. I've got another update. So Mum's just entered the chat.
Mum's here.
So actually, yeah, literally all of us are out, like sitting in the room. Mum, do you have anything you want to say?
Oh.
Hi. I've only heard just a wee bit, so I'm a little emotional as well, not just because of my son. They're talking the whole situation. So as I said, I've missed a lot, and yes, I am very proud of the children. They've done extremely well for themselves. We've only just tried to set the foundation, and they carried on what they're having to do for themselves. We are very pleased and very proud. Yeah, as I said, I'm quite emotional right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say too much, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys for giving him the opportunity to be able to speak for himself.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it for me.
Thanks, Mum.
Hijacking the conversation, literally become like a chat show. But no, over to you. And yeah, thank you everyone for the comments as well.
All I'm gonna say is, right, Mrs. McFarlane, you set the groundwork. Their achievement is your achievement, because they're just a fulfillment of the vision which you had when you had your children, and they have matured into, as far as I can tell from Leon, from Chloe and from Miles, from what I've heard of what they're doing, they are a beautiful reflection of what you had envisioned. And all we can say is thank you. Thank you for your diligence. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for producing 3 wonderful children.
Yes, we did very well.
You've done very, very well.
Thank you very
Guys,
much.
this has been probably one of the most emotional belonging interviews that I've ever done, because it's just wonderful to see Black excellence and Black achievement in the next generation, in this generation. And so I am very, very happy, Leon, that you agreed and that your family came on board with this. And all I would like to say is I want to wish you every success going forward. Yeah. And you can know that anytime you need any careers advice or any advice or just conversation, you've got my number. You know where you can find me. And I'll be coming and looking for you no matter where you are. Yeah, it's a privilege to have you on and your family. Okay. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And I'll continue with the message of passion, purpose, and progression. So yes,
Brilliant.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. I'm just wary that we've run out of time, but if everyone wants to stay on afterwards, I'm going to just do our usual, which is to just announce what's going to be happening next week. But Leon, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Wayne.
Thank you.
Right,
So
take care. Oh, actually, no. Yeah, continue. Sorry.
Sorry. Next week, we're going to have Joy Maitland, and next week it's part of Imperial as One's way of kicking off the International Women's Week, which is going to be the week of the 8th of March. And Joy Maitland has worked extensively with Imperial on a range of different projects, and as you can see, she's a managing director and an award-winning executive coach. So it's going to be another really good conversation next week. So please tune in next week. If you have missed any of the interviews in the past, then please go to our YouTube channel, which is tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO. And I just wanted to finish off by letting you know about another event which is going to be happening tomorrow night from 7:30, which is State of the Race, the African diaspora across the globe, looking at the world since the death of George Floyd. So it's got a number of professors and doctors who will give a different viewpoint about what's happening. So if you've got the time, please join that meeting tomorrow. For now, it's been great having this discussion today. So we're going to stop the recording, and anyone who wants to stay for the after party, you know what to do. Okay, so thanks very much, everyone, and I'll see you again next week.